So just to recap, what we have done in this lesson is that we have tried to understand how knowledge was created in the Indian context. We started off with this knowledge triangle, which has three important aspects: the prameya, the pramana and the pramata. We did not focus much on the pramata aspect, but we focused more on the prameya as well as the pramana. What are the legitimate types of objects into which we can inquire? What are the legitimate means which we can use to inquire into those objects? As we saw in the Prameya, the Vaisheshika had given a significant contribution by classifying the world into different types of categories, and the Nyaya had contributed to understanding what are the different types of Pramana. And after doing that, we had established a broad framework of how knowledge can be created. First of all, there should be some purpose that we want to meet, that is called the prayojana. And we are not able to fulfill this prayojana because we have a doubt. Shall we take this means or shall we take that means? That kind of a doubt we have. That is why we are not able to meet that prayojana. In order to clarify that doubt, we have entered into an argument, or we have entered into a discussion with somebody. Today when we say argument, you need not take exactly in the oral tradition. It could be over publication of papers, etc. I publish one paper, my colleague refutes it, etc. We can take it in the written format also. We need not always think that arguments have to be oral. So in order to get rid of the ambiguity, we have entered into an argument, a very structured argument which has to follow a particular logic. It has to be demonstrated. The reasoning that we have should be demonstrated, and we have to include in our reasoning certain examples which are accepted by everyone. And once the doubt is removed, we establish something called as a siddhanta, or the accepted tenet, and that then enters into a famous repository or a popular repository which everyone accepts, called the Nirnaya. So this is a general framework that you can say that Nyaya has offered in order to gain new knowledge. A brief application of the 5 steps that we saw in how an argument has to be set forward or demonstrated, I have shown just to show how this can be applicable even today. So for example, I had shown that the Anumana must have 5 steps. So here I have just made a parallel between the 5 steps and some research methodology that we follow in today's times. So the Pratigna should always be of the form X has Y. Okay, so this is our hypothesis. So in the current case, let us say you want to prove that polymer X is an excellent thermal insulator. So this is your hypothesis. So it's of the form polymer X has the property of being an excellent thermal insulator. So the hetu is your reason. What is your main reason or evidence to claim your hypothesis, or to set forth your hypothesis? Because it has the property Y. This could be anything, like it has some lattice structure, it has some chemical structure, something like that, or it is made up of so and so, something like that. Because of having that property, it is an excellent thermal insulator. That is what you want to say. So the next step is the udaharana. So wherever there is the hetu, the sadhya is there, and you have to show some previous instances. So translating that into modern research methodology terminology, we can say that you have to establish sufficient relationship between your reason and your conclusion or your hypothesis, right? And you have to substantiate this relation with prior studies. So the first section that many of you who will be taking up any dissertation work or any such thing is that you have to do something called as a literature survey. You have to tell what are all the previous studies done in this particular direction, and if you find any prior studies which are supporting your particular conclusion, you can use them specifically in order to substantiate your argument. So in the example that we have taken now, whatever has the property Y has excellent thermal insulator properties, like some other material that somebody else has discovered, K1, K2, K3, some other lab in some other country, they have discovered these material also have these polymers also have excellent thermal insulation capability because of having the same property. That is why this polymer also can have. You are trying to say that. After this, you have to prove that the current case that you have taken is comparable to all the prior studies. So if the prior studies were done at some ultra low temperatures, 0 degree Kelvin, etc., 0 Kelvin, etc., if they do that, whereas you are working on some normal room temperature, etc., then the studies are not cannot be compared to the prior studies that you have taken. So, you have to prove, or you have to sufficiently demonstrate that the current case that you have taken is like the previous studies that were constructed. So, this is the fourth step called Upanaya, and once you have done that, you finally come to the conclusion, which is the Nigamana, or they find the hypothesis is now concluded. So, hence to complete the example, hence it can serve as a excellent thermal insulator. The polymer X can serve as a thermal insulator. So, as we can see, the 5 steps that were used in the setting forth of our argument can be translated into modern research methodology terminology. I hope that this will be useful in your whatever dissertation work that you do, and you will remember that this kind of systematic way of establishing our conclusion can help in convincing somebody easier than simply an unsystematic way of trying to convince others. So, all of these steps were common, not just to the because they were produced by the Nyaya doesn't mean that only the Nyaya Darshana followed it or the Vaisheshika Darshana followed it. This was a common framework developed for all the darshanas, whether you can see the application even in Ayurveda and such other sciences also. So, they also followed the same methodology or procedure for creation of knowledge. So, both the procedural aspects, that is the Vada, you have to if you want to sincerely create new knowledge, you have to go through a Vada, not indulge in Jalpa, Vitanda, etc. And once you are indulging in a Vada, this is the kind of way in which you have to demonstrate the argument, was common to all the Shastras or disciplines that were there in pre-modern India. So, just because the Nyaya has developed it doesn't mean that it is restricted only to them. So, this is something of a very global or pan-Indian framework that the Nyaya Darshana had developed, and it was used by everyone else.